Right? Medgar Evers was a World War II veteran who was assassinated by a white World War II veteran. You have to tell that whole story. And once you start to tell that story, then your self-concept changes.
That's right. That's right.
And you see this, we know this. I mean, this is why they ban our history. They ban our history because Black history, by definition, is political.
That's right.
Because Black people, by definition, are political, right? Our history is political because every story of American greatness, every story of American exceptionalism you want to tell, here we are off to the corner. Say, how do you explain us?
That's right.
If all this is true, why are we here? How you bought and sold our ancestors, how you claim to be democratizing Europe, but denying violently democracy for Black people here. So we're the most inconvenient people to the story of American exceptionalism.
Right.
So they want to ban our history because we give lie, right? We reveal the lie of this country.
Right.
And we are heroes of that story. So what the research shows is that when you teach Black children Black history, they do better academically.
Absolutely.
This is not shocking.
That's right. It's right.
Right? If you see yourself in the story, then you have a powerful sense of who you are.
Sure.
And I know, I mean, this is why they ban our history, because once I got a little taste of Black history, I became incorrigible as a student. I was challenging everything, right?
Listen.
I would go up in social studies like, where are we? Why aren't you talking about this? What about this, right? And so all of a sudden, you don't just accept the narrative that they give you, and you start to challenge it.
Right.
And you start to have an understanding. So I, because of this class I took at 15 years old with a Black educator named Mr. Ray Dow, where he introduced me to Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett, and the year 1619, I became the child who would go on to create 1619 Project.
Wow.
If I don't get that class, I don't create this project.
That's right.
And so they want to ban the class because they don't want more of us.
That's right.
They don't want more Dr. Blacks. They don't want more Nikole Hannah-Jones.
Right.
They don't
That's
want people who can help our children know that there is nothing wrong with Black folks. There's something wrong with our country.
That's right. That's right. That's right. 1954, right? Brown versus Board, right? And most of us in this room are, of course, are aware that thousands and thousands of Black children were shipped to white schools, right? 1619 Project, of course, covers that. The question I would like to ask you is, what did white children miss by never being under the tutelage of Black instruction?
That's such that's a powerful and an important question. And I think, we're taught to think about Brown v. Board, of course, as being about the deficiencies in the education of Black children.
Right.
But if you actually read Brown v. Board, if you read the arguments that the NAACP was making, if you look at the oral arguments, which I'm nerdy as hell, so I've read all of it. Are y'all okay? Yeah. Okay. It's okay. We can enjoy ourselves too. I tell a lot of jokes because this is hard, and if I didn't tell a lot of jokes, I'd be up here crying.
Right.
So I read all the oral arguments, and the NAACP was actually making two arguments. They were making the argument that the segregation was degrading to Black Americans in a society built on racial caste, because the segregation wasn't just arguing we should have our own things. It was meant to treat us as inferior, right? It was meant to show that we were less than, and that oftentimes we were getting deprived of the equal amount of resources. For instance, in Georgia, there was a span of about 40 years where there wasn't a single high school in the state. They were funding high schools for white kids, but their own children didn't have a high school, right? Or they weren't getting, school buses, or they weren't getting textbooks. So we know that the resources weren't the same. So they were making that argument. But the parallel argument that they were making was that segregation was giving Black children a false sense of their own inferiority, but it was also giving white children a false sense of their superiority.
Right.
Now, the court didn't rule on that.
Right.
But what they were saying is that we are in a multiracial world. We are going out into the world, so you have to think 1954, what's happening. This is just at the beginning of the Cold War. We're starting to see, communism rising in America, and communists are engaging in this propaganda campaign. And so what they're really trying to say is that you are teaching white children that they're superior, and you're also not giving them an education to go out into a world that doesn't look like their classrooms. It doesn't look like their communities. So what white children were deprived of is one, just the ability to be around black people, and we're amazing. But they were also being deprived of the ability, and still are, because white children and black children remain segregated today, of an ability to get an education that prepares them for the world.
Yes.
An education that gives them empathy. I mean, this is why we have so much polarization, is white children can go most of their lives without ever having to have intimate relationships with anyone who's black, and certainly not someone who can be in a position of authority.
Right.
Because the funny thing about segregation is, because it so limited the opportunities for black Americans, black educators were actually far more educated than white educators.
That's right.
They had much higher degrees.
That's right.
They tended to, they would go and get their PhD or their master's degree, but could not work as a doctorate at a university or a scientist. So they would get these degrees, and then they would come back into the K-12 classroom.
That's right.
And so there's research that actually shows that they, on average, were far more educated and had far more advanced degrees than white teachers.
That's right.
Now, again, think about narrative. How many of y'all have ever heard that?
Yeah.
Right? It's true.
It is true.
But that's not the narrative. So the narrative was that our children were getting an inferior education. They were getting inferior resources.
Right.
But they did not have inferior educators.
Right. It makes me think.
That was a difference.
Absolutely. It makes me think of us at these HBCUs, right? Because of course I'm at an HBCU, and so are you. And the beauty and the power of HBCUs, I think that most people don't know, is that we were really making bricks without straw.
Yes.
Right? And we have been teaching
black
children. That's right. Did you hear me? We have been teaching black children not just textbook knowledge, but also knowledge of self, spiritual knowledge, right? Spiritual nurturing, right? The whole self, right? Yes. And I think this is critical, because in some ways we have not really, as black people, we've not really supported these institutions as fully as we need to. But these institutions have been the lifeblood of black people, right? And I'm saying that also because I'm segueing to an institution. I'm probably gonna get like 2 more questions. Good Lord help me. One of those is the black church. And I was telling you, I'm the church musician. I believe in the black church institutionally. I don't know that I believe in the black church theologically, right? That's another thing, right? But the question I want to ask you is, if you had your way, as the brilliant author of this text, if you had your way, what would you do with the black church?
Lord. Now you're trying to get me canceled. I'm gonna get fired.
You're fired, right?
And I'm gonna get canceled on the same day. On my day off, Saturday. Come on, man. So one, I would really suggest that folks read the essay in the book called Church by Anthea Butler. I
loved it.
I am not a theologian. In fact, when I occasionally get invited to give a talk at a church, I get worried that I'm gonna burst into flames when I'm in there. I'm not a religious person myself. I think that if we look historically at the role of the black church, the black church was always, even from the time of slavery, a place of political organizing,
Absolutely.
of liberation organizing.
Absolutely.
Because the black church was really the only place that black people could gather
That's right.
and not be under white supervision.
Right.
And so they really were founded as these radical places that were not just about telling black folks to get their reward when they die.
Right.
Right, but believing that the God of, that led the Israelites out of slavery also believed that they should not be enslaved.
That's right.
And that they had a right.